Picture this, dear viewer. You are walking through an arcade in 1993, question mark, something like that, and you see the Mortal Kombat arcade machine,
Oh my
and you
goodness.
see Sub-Zero ripping out someone's spine, and you say, "What this needs to be is an animated series for children." And you go home that day and find that your gods at the FCC and the TV airwaves have granted you your wish. In addition to other fighting games, perhaps more suited to a children's cartoon like Street Fighter and Darkstalkers. This is what we will cover on the Animates fighting game adaptation cartoon extravaganza Electric Boogaloo.
Which one should we start with? Shall we start with Mortal Kombat?
Yeah, I think that's the most straightforward of the bunch.
Hmm. Well, you say that, but
Oh, it's straightforward to me because I'm very familiar with this lore. I'm sure a lot of it is gibberish to a layman.
so going into Mortal Kombat Defenders of the Realm, I was terribly confused because they really just fling the lore right at your face and then expect you to know everything that's going on within the space of a 30-second intro, which does not tell you the story, just says, the last Mortal Kombat tournament is over. We've got an animated series now. Here are the characters. And then Raiden just shouts them in my face. And I'm like, what's going on? Who are these people? I don't recognize any of these characters. And then the series starts and they're in a massive battle and there's loads of stuff going on. And I was lost completely.
It doesn't help. I think the thing was they were basing this more directly on the movies than the comic. So they were hoping you would watch the two movies, then move right to the TV show, which I don't think many people did.
I've not seen either of the movies.
You have it. See, I've seen you get a little excited about them bringing back the actor of Shang Tsung. That I thought that was maybe among your '90s catalog. They're very, very corny, of course, but I think you dig them like for those reasons.
I have seen bits and pieces of the first one. In fact, I think I might have seen the first one, but not for about 20 years, to the point where I can't really remember much of it. But I remember
That's fair.
bits of it. I've
So,
definitely never seen the second one.
so I'll lay out the Mortal Kombat lore like as I would explain it to a new fan. This is where everyone at home can take a nap. So, Mortal Kombat is so. Let me rewind. So there's our world, and that's Earth Realm, and then there's Outworld, which is like a magical world, separate from ours. The Lord of Outworld is Shao Kahn, and he wants to merge our world with his so he can conquer it, so he can have it, because he's been like amalgamating worlds to his own, kind of as a collection. But in order to do this, the Elder Gods put up a safeguard called Mortal Kombat, and that's a tournament where Outworld competitors fight Earthrealm competitors, and 10 consecutive victories of tournaments for your representing realm means basically the scale's in your favor. If Shao Kahn wins 10, he can just go full hog and take over Earth. And if we win 10, we tell him to buzz off and never come back. So that's kind of the premise of the tournament itself. What happens though is in Mortal Kombat 3, Shao Kahn figures out a loophole to just open portals without winning the tournament. So that's where that sets us, is that he's opening those portals to send his guys through, and Earthrealm has to like defend itself now.
I see.
Yeah.
I never
Um,
imagined, like in my head, Shao Kahn was always some sort of mystical creature. I didn't imagine him being a man sending through cyborgs, sending cyborgs through portals to conquer the
so
world.
so that's actually really there's kind of a lot as to because you're actually correct. He's kind of a mystical barbarian is the best I can describe him. He fights with very brute force and blunt weapons like his big warhammer, but he does have magic at his disposal, including eating souls to get stronger and bulk himself up. He does, however, have allies from Earthrealm that supply him with modern technology, and that's so he made friends with the Lin Kuei clan and their robots, and the Black Dragon and their weapons.
I see.
Yeah, kind of to bolster his own forces. So they betray Earthrealm to for their own benefit, if you will.
I see. See, this would have
Yeah.
been good information. It's almost like there's a missing season of Mortal Kombat that came prior to this, and
No,
we
yeah.
needed that to understand what was happening. At least
And that
for
was
me.
probably what they intended the movies to be.
I guess so, yeah. So are
Yeah.
these in continuity with the two movies, or is it just
It's
loosely based?
heavily implicit. The flashback fight between Liu Kang and older Sub-Zero is the choreography is lifted directly from the movies.
Ah, I see.
Yeah. And the fact that Johnny Cage is absent when he's one of the most popular characters is because he dies in the second film, and they're like keeping that continuity as well.
Ah, I see.
Yeah. Um, they do some weird things with the characters here, but some stick. For instance, Kano was originally intended in the 2D games to be a Japanese fighter, but the actor who played him in the live action film gave him an Australian accent, and that just stuck. And to this day in the games, he's Australian.
Interesting, because I'd written down as one of my points from this series, Cockney Kano, because to me he sounded like he had kind of an East London accent, which I was delighted by when he showed up. Because Kano's probably my favorite character, I think. He was the one that I always used to enjoy playing as when I would play the game back in the day. And when he turned up in this through a portal and was like, I'm fucking Kano, mate. I'm here for the Mortal Kombat tournament. I was like, oh, what a delight of a character, because everyone else was kind of bland up until this point, if I'm honest. No one really
Yeah.
stuck with me.
Um, the big ones I single out, I think about this version of Raiden a lot. Um, what's weird is that so Raiden, as we know him today in the games, is the big good of Mortal Kombat, kind of as you see him in this show. But in the games, he's much more infallibly like nice. He's like the big good guy. But in this show, he's very, very snarky. He's very sardonic, and he's a little hostile. And that's because he was originally envisioned as a bad guy in the early Mortal Kombat games. He wanted to prove that gods were better than mortals in Mortal Kombat. So he was just kind of a jerk that way. So they kind of meet the middle point at this point that he's the big good, but he still looks down on the mortals.
Interesting. One of my notes, in fact, ties in with this, and I have simply put, everyone hates Raiden, because
Yeah.
every time he shows up, someone has a go at him for something. Like one of the, I think is it Jax, who says in one of the episodes, well, if it isn't the unhelpful one, or something like that, when he turns up.
Well,
And it's like, oh, geez, he's just showed up.
what's hilarious about that is that not much has changed because everyone hates Raiden in the games today, but for a roundabout reason where he's perfectly nice but constantly fucks up. Like he just makes dumb mistakes all the time, and now everyone resents him.
That's a very interesting dynamic, and not at all how I would have pictured the character. I always
Right.
saw him as being kind of just a mysterious sort of, not even really a mentor figure, just a guy who came and did his own thing and then disappeared. Like he didn't stick around. He was kind of a loner. That was
He
always how
gives
I.
that tone with like the shadowy look over his eyes by the hat.
Hmm.
Yeah, yeah, I could see that. Um, other character I kind of want to highlight as being written kind of strangely is Stryker, because he's the cop and he is just the biggest jerk. Honestly, he's always talking shit to somebody, and I wonder if it's because he looked really lame next to the other like martial artists and military people, and he's just like a rent-a-cop. So they made him just openly hostile and rude at all times.
Is he the guy with the backwards facing baseball cap?
Yes.
Yeah, I just noticed halfway through that he had a backwards facing cap on, and I was like peering at the screen, thinking, "Is there a cap?" And it struck me as such a. I had no memory of him from the game whatsoever.
He is in Mortal Kombat 3 only, and he's just
Ah,
a policeman who his special move is pulling out his Glock and dispensing justice,
I see.
which they could not put in this show. So all he does is hang around until it's his turn to close the portal.
Yeah, he's usually just driving a vehicle of some kind.
And it's speaking of vehicles, they wanted to sell toys with this because the most hilarious thing only to someone who really knows Mortal Kombat. Do you remember in the first episode when they're like, it's the nomads, and those kind of creature dudes like fly in a spaceship kind of?
Yeah.
Nothing like that was ever in the games. They were clear like we need to like have some GI Joe spaceships and speeders to market. So there's a plot point in the games where that nomadic race, they're called the Tarkatans in the games, don't understand how guns work. They're like, what are these gun things the Black Dragons are using? And they're in this show just flying a Millennium Falcon, and it's hysterical.
Did they do toys of this series, or did they
I
not get that
let's
far?
let's see, because it was canceled very quickly. It wouldn't surprise me if there was toys. No, I know there was like toys based on the games in the first place, so I wonder if it just grew redundant. I can't find heads or tails of any toys. Just like the designs I find are just straight from the games as opposed to the show. So I think it just didn't happen.
Everything's very Bruce Timm inspired, I noticed.
Oh yeah, I like the shading and some of those designs. I agree.
Yeah. And the characters look weird when they turn and face you directly, like the front facing Simpsons. They look very strange, and I was like, ooh. As soon as someone just turned and looked directly at the camera, I was not
Yeah.
prepared for it.
Um, one of the two episodes I gave you was called Amends, and I specifically picked out that one because it features Cabal, and he's probably my favorite fighter from the original 2D era of Mortal Kombat. And they treat him with a lot of reverence for a fighter who was more of an oddball in the games. I was curious maybe what you thought of that episode.
That was quite an interesting one. I thought I noticed there's a lot of backstories that they put into this show, so they kind of make an effort to tell you what's happened before, because everyone seems to have a flashback to some sort of fight. Um, so Cabal, am I remembering correctly, is the man who was scarred horribly and has to wear the ventilator mask?
Yes, and what's hilarious is that they treat it like an almost, for some reason, the tonology reminds me of Gargoyles when Sonya is just like, no, let me see your face. And he's like, no, I'm hideous.
Yeah.
And there's like I think they deliberately put in organ as like a Phantom of the Opera thing. And what's hilarious is Cabal's fatality in Mortal Kombat 3 is removing his helmet and giving the opponent a heart attack with his hideous face.
Wow. He really was not particularly hideous in this. He just had a couple of scars.
No, no, he wasn't. Yeah, it was neat that they devoted an episode to him when he was a hard character to get a read on, and that was kind of the point. So I'm a little bit happy they actually like it's a little corny, it's not a particularly good episode, but I was kind of happy that he kind of got his hour there.
I guess it shows that they had people working on the series who actually did know the lore and were making kind of an effort to make this work.
Yeah, and yet there's some strange things too. Like they refer to the leader of the nomads as Karbrak, when in the games that character would be Baraka, which Karbrak almost just feels like an anagram, like you switch around the letters of
Oh
Baraka.
yeah,
So was there a rights dispute there, or it was a little weird.
that's weird.
There's a point, yeah, there's a point later where they're like, it's Shao Kahn's top assassin in the Cabal episode, and this guy we've never seen before walks through a portal. When there are multiple Shao Kahn minions that could have gone in that place. So there's some weird stuff like that. But ultimately, they do seem to know their stuff.
Is this a popular series within the Mortal Kombat fandom? do they do
No, it's a
they think,
joke.
well, no, I thought that might be the case, but you
It's a
never know.
total. I think it tries really hard to be very. I don't think it's terrible. Like it holds up okay. There's I don't think you saw. I don't think I gave you this episode, but they do give everyone a lot of backstory. There's a point where Stryker and Liu Kang have like a heart to heart, and Stryker's like, "The reason I'm this way is because my wife left me for another guy."
Wow.
It's like okay. Liu
That's
Kang's kind of like, "I didn't ask, and I don't really know what to do with that."
The only other episode of this I watched was the one where Scorpion returns and starts resurrecting
Mm,
the armies of the dead.
I it's so weird because Scorpion, as again as we know him today, is the mascot of Mortal Kombat more or less, and he wasn't intended to be that because the main hero was Liu Kang, but people kind of found Liu Kang milquetoast and boring, and everyone loved Scorpion, and to the point that the creator, openly admits that Scorpion is his favorite character. Um, so this was still in an era where they're pushing for Liu Kang to be the main good guy, and that's why Scorpion is like more or less a jobber, whereas today he's like one of the most important characters.
So is Scorpion a good guy now, or is he the villain of the game?
So Scorpion is a misguided anti-hero turned good.
I see.
Yes. At this point, he would still be in his brooding, misguided phase. He has a grudge with Sub Zero because a wicked sorcerer who's in this show, but I don't think you met him. A wicked sorcerer shapeshifted into Sub Zero and killed his family and gave him a vendetta to manipulate him into becoming like a hellspawn. Then at some point, when he learns the truth, he kind of turns over a new leaf.
Right.
Yeah,
But
the
in
very
this, he's
90s.
just kind of like generic bad guy of the week, I guess. I don't know if he appears in more episodes than that one.
I don't think he's in a ton, and he has a terrible voice in this too.
Yeah, it didn't seem to fit the character particularly well. I did
He always
wonder.
had the very sorry, he had the very famous "Get over here," but in the show he's like, "Get over here."
Yeah, I noticed that when he's just talking to, what is it he's talking, like some spirits sort of flowing around in a cavern, and he says
Something
get
like
over
that.
here, and they come over to him. It's like the emphasis is a bit different here.
Yeah,
But he was interesting enough. I did like Scorpion as a character. um,
yeah. If you like, you might want to check out. They recently made an animated movie that retells the first game from Scorpion's perspective. That and they actually, it's pretty. It's like bloody. It's like I think it's like an R-rated animated film, straight to DVD. It's actually, I think it holds up pretty solid and does a good job, like actually establishing the lore a little better.
okay.
Yeah, you might get a kick out of that one.
I feel that lore is interesting, and there's plenty you can do with the lore. But jumping
It,
into it in this series was a terrible idea. They should have just like do a standard animated series of Mortal Kombat, present all the characters, and I think that probably would have worked a lot better. Although I don't think Mortal Kombat. I mean, the very fact that it's got mortal in in the title, it's not really something you can adapt to an animated series at all. So
they
it's
have to
one
be
of those
very.
ones that seems very inappropriate and very cash grabby. Like, we've done the movies
Hmm.
now. Let's do the animated series and the toys and the anime and the let's get as much possible as we can. We'll cover all the fan bases. And this
I
was
do
the
think
one
there's
they
like
shouldn't
a
have done.
point. Sorry, go on. Sorry.
No, no, that's pretty much it.
I do think there's a point where they're like, we know kids are playing these games, even though they're not technically supposed to. So, like, why not? But it does just like you have to make it very toothless and just not do what people like about the games.
Yeah, maybe it came a bit too late.
Hmm.
Because I have no memory of this series coming out at all. Whether they just didn't show it in the UK,
Maybe
possibly.
not.
But I do remember, like, a lot of people had Mortal Kombat 2, I think, at least. And I remember playing that around at many of my friends' houses at the time. And I'm sure a lot of them probably would have watched the Mortal Kombat animated series, but I have no memory of this whatsoever. So maybe it came after a point where we were all actually playing that game.
And it was a wild, outrageous failure as a cartoon, too. So I wouldn't be surprised if it just did not make its rounds.
Possibly, yeah. Maybe it just no one wanted to pick it up, or they just thought, a Mortal Kombat animated series, we can't show that to kids, and nobody bought the rights or something.
Uh, I guess one thing I'm surprised we didn't touch on is the constant club level like dubstep music.
Yeah.
because at the time everyone associated Mortal Kombat with the Mortal Kombat arena music. So every fight in this show,
Yeah.
every single.
Yeah, it's literally the only piece of music in the whole damn series.
I think the very first scene when Nightwolf is like typing away at his computer and his pet wolf like play fights with him, they still put it the first instance of
It's easy to repeat those notes. You don't have
yeah.
to. No need for a soundtrack.
Ugh. Well, that's a lot of my thoughts on Mortal Kombat. It's got its moments, and I appreciate it as like just a piece of Mortal Kombat history as a diehard for that series, as something of an expert, if you will. But ultimately, it's very strange, and I think has more value as something to laugh at.
Yeah, it's not sort of. I don't know if it's terrible. Like, without having the attachment to Mortal Kombat, the franchise, I wouldn't say this was an awful cartoon, but it was. Out of everything we've watched so far, this was the one that I probably have least interest in exploring any further, I would say.
Yeah, it
Because
needs more time in the oven.
yeah, I just couldn't get into it. There was too much going on. There was not enough explanation for what had happened. And all the characters just seemed to a lot of characters, but flashbacks all the time. I couldn't keep
Yeah.
up. It was just
Everyone
confusing.
had their flashback, but you don't mean to tell me you weren't attached to Sonya and her hip and charming catchphrase, "Combat time."
That one went over my head. I'm afraid I don't even remember that
She said,
catchphrase.
"I'm surprised you don't remember. I think she says it like 5 times through the episodes."
What I wanted was just people shouting the names of their moves at me constantly, which we will get from our next cartoon.
Ah, yes.